Welcome to Math 20 Video Lecture Series. Sa video ito, magsasolve tayo ng equations na merong inverse trigonometric functions. So, dapat master na natin yung previous lesson natin about inverse trig functions para hindi tayo mahirapan dito. Okay, so let us begin. So, ito basically yung itsura ng isang equations involving trigonometric functions. So, as you can see, you have inverse trigonometric functions, may variables, and etong mga bagay na to are just numbers. So, ito yung guidelines natin or yung general rule. So, number 1, evaluate the expressions involving special real numbers such as this one and this one. And then, isolate one expression involving inverse trigonometric function on one side of the equation if possible. So, sa case na to, i-isolate natin to sa isang side. So, pag in the case when there are more than one unknown inverse trigonometric function, so ang gagawin natin, represent each unknown by a variable. So, yung mga angles natin sila yon. So, apply a suitable trigonometric function to both sides. So, depende yan sa preference or sa problem. Use sum or difference identities to simplify the problem. So, usually, ito yung ginagamit ng mga identities or lumalabas. So, check if the obtained solutions are valid. Okay, so gawin nga natin itong pinakaunang example natin. Okay, so let us solve for x in cosine inverse x over 4 plus tangent inverse negative square root of 3 over 3 equal to cotangent inverse 0. Okay, so iwanan muna natin tong part na to. Anong value nito? Tangent inverse negative square root of 3 over 3. Okay, so mag-scratch tayo ha. So, ilet natin na y or theta yon. Tangent inverse negative square root of 3 over 3. So, yung tangent pwede lipat sa kabila, magiging tangent theta is negative square root of 3 over 3. Pero ang range ni tangent inverse is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So, sinong angle yan doon si theta? So, ito siya kasi negative yung tangent. Okay, at sino yan? It must be negative pi over 6. Okay. Negative pi over 6. So, this is theta. Theta is negative pi over 6. So, that is tangent inverse. Negative square root of 3 over 3. Equal to, okay, ganun ulit. Scratch ulit tayo for this part. So, siya naman yung theta natin. But theta equal to cotangent inverse 0. Cotangent theta is 0. So, ang range ni cotangent inverse ay 0 to pi. Okay? So, anong angle dito will give you a cotangent equal to 0? I think it's pi over 2. Yes, because cotangent pi over 2 is 0. So, cotangent inverse 0 is pi over 2. Okay, so burahin na natin itong scratch part. And then the next step is to isolate yung inverse trig function. So, yung cosine inverse x over 4 equal to pi over 2. Tapos, lipat sa kabila ito, it becomes plus pi over 6. Ano yan? Pag inad natin to, it's 2 pi over 3. Ang LCD is 6 pi plus 3 pi over 6. Okay, so 4 pi over 6 or 2 pi over 3 tama na. So, cosine inverse is 2 pi over 3. Because this is 2 pi over 3. Okay, so sabi natin, by the definition of cosine inverse, pwede mo ilipat sa kabila iyon. Pero magiging cosine na lang siya. So, cosine 2 pi over 3. At anong value ng cosine 2 pi over 3? Nasa second quadrant siya, so negative. Second quadrant ito. Tapos, over 3, so that is 1/2. Okay. And then to compute for x, multiply both sides by 4. So the answer is, candidate for the final answer is negative 2. So ang gagawin natin, we have to check. So isa-substitute natin yung negative 2 doon sa original equation. Okay? So ano mangyayari? Okay, so checking. Important tong part na ito. Kasi yung mga na-solve mo dito, pwedeng sobra sila. So, candidate ito. So, pwedeng siya na yung sagot or pwedeng walang sagot. Okay, so what happens if x is negative 2? Plug in dito. We get cosine inverse cosine inverse negative 1/2. Tama ba yun? Okay. Negative 2 divided by 4, negative 1. Okay. So, plus, value nito is negative pi over 6. Is it equal to pi over 2? Okay, so what is cosine inverse negative 1/2? So, anong cosine sa 0 to pi will give, anong angles from 0 to pi will give a cosine of negative 1/2? So, andito yun, no? So, that is 2 pi over 3. Okay. Are these two equal? So, let us check. LCD is 6. 4 pi over 3 minus pi. Okay. 3 pi over 6, is it equal to pi over 2? Yes. So, nasa-satisfy ni x equal to negative 2 is sagot. Therefore, x is negative 2. Okay, so let's do another one. Let us solve for x in secant inverse negative square root of 2 minus tangent inverse x minus 2 equal to cosecant inverse negative 2. Okay. So, ganun ulit, isa-solve muna natin mga bagay na ito. Ano ba mga value niya? So, recall natin yung range ng secant inverse ka cosecant inverse. So, let me just crop this. Okay. Okay, scratch part muna tayo. So, ito muna, si secant inverse. So, let theta equal to secant inverse negative square root of 2. So, yung theta natin somewhere nandito or nandito. So, this secant theta is negative square root of 2. So, negative ang secant or cosine is negative. So, take the reciprocal of both sides. Cosine theta is negative square root of 2 over 2. So, andito yan para cosine is negative. At anong pi over 4? Yung nandito, anong multiple ni pi over 4? So, 4 pi over 4 5 pi over 4. So, it's 5 pi over 4. Oops. Okay. So, theta is 5 pi over 4. So, this is 5 pi over 4 minus tangent, copyin lang natin, x minus 2, equal to, dito naman tayo magsa-scratch word. Okay, so burahin na natin ito. So, let naman natin ang theta si cosecant inverse negative 2. And yung theta mo, andito or nandito. Okay, so kunin natin ang cosecant of both sides. So, hindi tayo sanay sa cosecant. Kunin natin reciprocal para maging sine. Reciprocal of both sides. Negative 1. So, ang tanong, which angle sa dalawang quadrants na ito will make sine theta equal to negative 1/2. So, sine is negative, nasa quadrant 3 dapat siya. Okay. So, kung negative 1/2, dapat a multiple siya ni pi over 6. So, anong pi over 6 yon? So, here we have pi over 6, negative pi over 6, ito, negative 5 pi over 6. Okay? Negative 5 pi over 6. So, burahin na natin yung mga hindi na natin kailangan. Okay, and then, yung next step daw is to isolate yung may inverse trig function. Okay, so yung 5 pi over 4, ito lilipat natin sa left, magiging plus 5 pi over 6. Then ito lilipat natin sa right. Okay, so anong lalabas dito? The LCD is 12. So, times 3, 15 pi, 10 pi. So, tangent inverse of x minus 2 is equal to 25 pi over 12. Hindi ba suspicious to? Kasi ang range ni tangent inverse, balikan natin yung range niya ha. Drawing ko na lang. So, ang range niya ni tangent inverse ay negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So, dito lang maglalaro dapat yun. Okay? Pero nasan si 25 pi over 12? Wala na siya sa interval na to. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, wala kang makukuha kahit anong x na ipasok mo dyan, hindi lalabas to. Kasi kahit anong x ang ipasok mo dito, ang lalabas is nasa loob lang nito. But 25 pi over 12 is not in this interval. So, ang sasabihin nyo dito, this has no solution. Okay? So, yung given problem, this one, has no solution. Okay, dun tayo sa next problem. Second to the last problem. Okay, so let us solve for sine inverse x minus cosine inverse x equal to pi over 6. So, dalawa yung inverse trig functions natin. So, dahil meron tayong more than one inverse trig functions, ililet lang natin sila as angles. So, sabihin natin yung isa alpha, isa beta. So, let alpha equal to sine inverse of x and beta equal to cosine inverse of x. So, meron na tayong alpha minus beta equal to pi over 6. Okay? So, ang pwede natin gawin dito, actually, pwede mong kunin yung sine of both sides, cosine of both sides, or pwede mag-transpose ka muna, tapos sine and cosine of both sides, cosine of both sides. Depende sa mukhang magiging madali. So, feeling ko lang, mukhang magiging madali is pag nilagay ko dito yung beta. Or pwede nyo rin naman hindi gawin tong step na to. So, it's up to you. So, ang gagawin ko is I will take the sine of both sides. Or pwede rin namang cosine. It depends on you. So, sine alpha is equal to sine pi over 6 plus beta. Okay, but what is sine of alpha? So, from here, sine of alpha is x. So, that is x. Anong restriction pala ni alpha natin? Negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So, siya yung alpha. Okay? Kasi yun yung range ng inverse trig function. For cosine naman, or for beta, 0 to pi, and dito si beta. Okay. So, tingin tayo dito. So, using the sum identity, this is sin, cos, sin. Okay? So, simplify natin. X is equal to sine pi over 6 is 1/2. Cosine beta is, so tingin ulit dito. So this means cosine beta is x plus cosine pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 2. And sine beta, hindi natin alam nasa yung sine beta. Wala tayong value nun. But we can compute using this one. So, gagamit lang tayo ng identity. So, sine square beta is equal to 1 minus cosine square beta. So, sine beta is plus minus square root of 1 minus cosine square beta. Ay, tatakpan ko. Okay? So, sine beta is equal to plus minus square root of 1 minus. What is cosine beta? Cosine beta is x. So, 1 minus x square. Ang tanong, positive or negative? Nasaan ba si beta? Beta is in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. So, kahit anong quadrant dyan, quadrant 1 or 2, via all sinta ko, positive si sine beta. Okay. So, sine beta is positive. So, kahit alisin na natin. So, plug in na natin siya dito. So, ito yung value na. Okay? So, solve na natin si x. So, naalala nyo pa ba? Isa itong radical equation. So, paano nagsasolve ng radical equation? I-isolate nyo yung may radical sign, tapos isi-square nyo yung both sides, or i-cube nyo, or depende doon sa index ng radical. But in this case, isa-square lang kasi square root ito. So, isolate muna natin. So, x minus 1/2 x is equal to square root of 3 over 2, 1 minus x square. Multiply both sides by 2. Ito ay x over 2. And then, multiply both sides by 2. We get x is equal to square root of 3, square root of 1 minus x square. Para ma-tsugi yung radical sign, we have to take the square root of At we have to take the square of both sides. Square both sides, x squared is equal to 3 times 1 minus x squared. So x squared is 3 minus 3x squared. Lipat sa kabila si negative 3x squared, it becomes positive 3x squared. So magiging 4x squared equal to 3. X squared is 3/4. So x is equal to plus minus square root of 3 over square root of 4, which is 2. So ito yung two candidates natin for the correct answer. So pwedeng wala dyan ng sagot, pwedeng isa lang, or pwedeng pareha sila. So ipa-plug in natin dito and we will check if masasatisfy ba nila. Okay, so unahin natin yung kay negative square root of 3 over 2. So copyin lang natin yung original equation para hintay balik-balik. So the first candidate is when x is negative square root of 3 over 2. Ano mangyayari? Sine inverse negative square root of 3 over 2 minus cosine inverse negative square root of 3 over 2. Is it equal to pi over 6? So, ko-compute natin yung ito. So, you can do the scratch work gaya ng ginawa natin sa first step. And you will get that this is negative pi over 3. And this is negative 5 pi over 6. So, are these two equal? Let us check. Okay. So, negative pi over 3 plus 5 pi over 6 na kasi negative. Is it equal to pi over 6? So, this is 4 pi over 6 and they are not equal. Okay. Tama ba? Negative 5 pi over 6 ito. Check nga natin. Kung theta is cosine inverse negative square root of 3 over 2. Cosine is oh, it's 5 pi over 6. Okay, sorry. So, dapat ito minus. So, if we subtract, we get negative oops, mali para ako minus. Ulit niya. Okay, so this is negative pi over 3. Kopyahin natin. Negative pi over 3. 5 pi over 6. So, 5 pi over 6. This minus sign is this minus sign. Okay, equal kaya yan. Ano LCD? 6. Negative 2 pi minus 5 pi. So, negative 7 pi over 6. So, hindi equal ito. So, ibig sabihin, this is not a solution. So, etong part na ito is an extraneous solution. Okay. Okay, let us try naman. Burahin ko na siya. Although kasali sa solution yun, ha? Okay, so when x is square root of 3 over 2. So, sine inverse square root of 3 over 2 minus cosine inverse square root of 3 over 2. Is it equal to pi over 6? This is pi over 3. This is pi over 6. Are these equal? So, 2 pi over 6 minus pi over 6, is it equal to pi over 6? Yes. So, ibig sabihin, ang solution lang natin is x equal to square root of 3 over 2. ang ating lone solution. Okay, so let's do one last example. Medyo mahaba ito. Medyo mahirap kasi yung problem. Okay. Okay, last example. Cosine inverse x over 2 plus tangent inverse x equal to pi over 2. Compute natin yan. So, we have two different trig functions again. So, i-let natin yan as alpha and beta. Can I change the variable? Kasi gagamitin ko yung x and y mamaya. So, gawin na lang natin itong z na lang. Okay, z. So, let us solve for z. Okay, so let alpha equal to cosine inverse z over 2 and beta equal to tangent inverse z. So, magiging equation na natin ay alpha plus beta equal to pi over 2. Okay, usog natin dito. Okay, so ito na yung sinusolve natin. Okay? So, what you can do is you can take sine of both sides, cosine of both sides. Pero parang mas maganda ang cosine kasi when you get the cosine of pi over to 0. Okay, let's try. Okay, so cosine alpha plus beta is cosine pi over 2. Using the sum identity, cosine alpha plus beta is cos minus sin. And cosine pi over 2 is 0. Okay, so we have to express this one in terms of yung original variable z by using itong mga nilet natin. So, we need cosine alpha and cosine alpha, sine alpha, cosine beta, sine beta. Okay, yung mga alpha muna yung gawin natin. So, set aside muna natin ito. Okay, so from here, we know cosine alpha is z over 2. Okay, meron na tayo nito. So, that is z over 2 times something minus equal to 0. So, saan equal ang cosine alpha? Ano yung formula natin? Pwede tayo mag-trig identity na lang. So, sine square or sine alpha is plus minus square root of 1 minus cosine square alpha. Or the trig way of doing it na lang para mas maikli. Okay, cosine alpha is x over r. So, x is z, r is 2, kasi ang radius natin ay positive. So, x square plus y square is equal to r square. So, y square is, ang r square natin is 4 minus x square, which is z square. So, y is plus minus square root of 4 minus z square. Ang tanong, positive or negative? Nasaan ba si alpha? Alpha is cosine inverse. Cosine inverse nasa quadrant 1 or 2 lang. So, meaning, ang y mo is positive. So, ang sine alpha is y over r. Ang r natin ay 2. So, yan yung ilalagay natin dito. Siya yung sine alpha. Okay. So, okay na yung mga naka-sine alpha. So, okay. Yung sine alpha tsaka cosine alpha. So, punta na tayo kay beta. Ala, nasa na si beta? So, ibalik natin si beta. Okay. So, from here, tangent beta is equal to z. Where beta is nasa quadrant 1 or 4. Negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So, kailangan natin ng cosine and sine beta. So, this is y over x. Okay, so y is z. May over 1 yan, diba? And x is 1. Nagme-make sense na x is 1 kasi positive ang x dito. So, ang z natin yung... this is beta. Tangent beta is z. So, yung x mo dapat ay positive. Okay? So, we will compute for r, which is square root of x squared plus y squared. Square root of 1 plus z squared. So, ang ating cosine beta is x over r. Ang x natin is 1. Ang r is the square root. And sine beta is y over r. Y natin is z over square root ng 1 plus z squared. Okay? Oops. Okay, so ipa-plug in na natin yan. Cosine dito, sine. Well, I need space. So let me just copy this. Okay, so andun siya. Resize natin. Yan. And the other one, okay, so this is sine beta. Lakihan ko lang noon. Okay, so meron na tayong ganito. Okay, so medyo maano siya, mahirap para i-solve. Although, naalis na natin yung mga inverse trig functions. So, ikakopy ko lang to kasi kailangan natin ng space to solve this one. Okay. Okay, so para mawala yung fractions, let us multiply both sides by the LCD. So, the LCD is 2 square root of 1 plus z square. So, multiply natin both sides by this. So, this times this, cancel yon. This times this, cancel yon. 0 times the LCD is 0. So, we are left with z minus z square root of 4 minus z square equal to 0. Oh, hindi ba factorable to? 1 minus square root. Equate each factor to 0. So, z is 0. Or, when you equate this to 0, magiging 4 minus z square is 1. Square both sides. So, 3 is equal to z square. So, z is equal to plus minus square root of 3. So, at least nakuha na natin yung z. So, may mga candidates na tayo. These are our 3 candidates. Plus minus square root of 3. and z equal to 0. So, ipa-plug in na lang natin sila doon sa original equation natin and then check if the two sides of the equation agree. So, sulat ko lang ulit yung original equation. It's cosine inverse z over 2 plus tangent inverse z equal to pi over 2. First candidate natin is when x is 0, what do we get? Cosine inverse 0 plus tangent inverse 0, is it pi over 2? Cosine inverse 0 is pi over 2. This is 0. So yes, nag-agree sila. Check. So this is a solution. Okay, next. Next candidate is x equal to square root of 3. So maging cosine inverse. Bakit x? It should be z. Okay. So when z is square root of 3, we get square root of 3 over 2 plus tangent inverse square root of 3. Equal kaya siya sa pi over 2? This is pi over 6 and this is pi over 3. And yes, when you combine this, you get pi over 2. So check. So meaning solution ito. And finally, when z is negative square root of 3, so cosine inverse, lagay dito, plus tangent inverse negative square root of 3, is it equal to pi over 2? Okay, so this one is 5 pi over 6. And this is negative pi over 3. Mag-equal ba yan? Yes, okay. So, these are the 3 solutions. Or kung gusto mong i-enclose lang sa isang set, you say that the solution set is 0, negative square root of 3, square root of 3. Okay. So, dyan nagtatapos yung lecture natin about equations involving inverse trigonometric functions. So, malaking bagay na kabisado nyo yung unit circle para hindi mahirapan dito. And, kailangan din yung mga previous lessons natin, like, yung pagsasolve ng radical equations or equations in general. So, bye-bye! Sana na-gets ninyo. See you sa next video. Oh my God.